Hello, my name's Steve Campitelli. I'm from Academic Skills at the University of Melbourne. Welcome to this presentation on writing clearly for an academic audience. Part 1 of this presentation looks at structure and key elements of academic paragraphs. Now, through the presentation, I'm going to be asking you to stop the recording, to consider questions, or perhaps to make notes. So when I do that, stop the recording and think about what we're asking you to do. And I'm going to start off with some questions where I ask you, what do you know about paragraph structure? How long should a paragraph be? And what do you think are the key elements of a good paragraph? So take 30 seconds to a minute to stop the recording and consider your answers to those questions. Okay, throughout the presentation, we'll get some of the answers to these questions. The paragraph is considered to be the building block of academic writing, and that's why we pay so much attention to getting it right. It's an idea unit. It's not really a length unit as such. It's a collection of sentences to make up an idea that you want to put forward or put across in your academic writing. There are two really important elements for paragraph construction. One is that of coherence. Does the paragraph make sense? Is it logical? And that's about the content of what you're writing. Secondly, does it have cohesion? How do the sentences and ideas within the paragraph link to one another? Does it join together? So we have coherence on the one hand, which is about logic, and we have cohesion on the other hand, which is about linkage and joining together. Now, both of these apply at a micro level, at the sentence and paragraph level, and then again at a larger whole paper level. And the longer the paper you're writing it in an academic context, the more it applies at a larger level. Okay, let's look at an example. Again, I want you to pause the recording and spend 30 seconds reading through this paragraph. Have you noticed anything? It's not a very cohesive or coherent paragraph, is it? If we highlight those key terms, we can see it coming out even more clearly. That expression, post-purchase cognitive dissonance, is appearing repetitively, annoyingly repetitively throughout the paragraph. So, what we have here is perhaps one of the number one issues that I come across in my work with academic writing. We have essentially two issues. One, the writing is clearly repetitive, as you can see by the blue highlights, and it's choppy. A lot of short, choppy sentences that in fact read like a shopping list. And that shopping list, that statement listing problem, I find is the most common issue in academic writing. So, this paragraph has 9 sentences in it. For something this short, 9 sentences is too many. So, when we're looking at this repetition, let's look at some of the terms we can perhaps even remove. If we look at the first sentence there, the next issue to be examined is post-purchase cognitive dissonance. Post-purchase cognitive dissonance is the feeling, ... We've got those two terms coming at the end of the first sentence and the start of the next. That reflexive repetition is simply not necessary, and that happens a lot, particularly when people are defining terms. They'll end the sentence on the term and start the sentence with the same term. When that happens, you can take one of them out and replace it with which. The next issue to be examined is post-purchase cognitive dissonance, which is the feeling of unease. We've got a linked idea. The ideas are clearly related, they're joined, and we can use a simple linker, which. It's a great linker. So, moving on to the same paragraph, I want you to pause it again, read it, and let's see what sort of differences we have now. Okay, what I hope you can see is we have a more cohesive and thereby a more coherent paragraph. We have 9 sentences, now reduced to 4. We've got greater flow and linking. We've got the citation put in as well. I want you to see the techniques by which we reduce that clumsy repetition, by which we increase flow and link, and how we highlight importance, which is something I really want to emphasize in paragraphing. One of those ways by which we reduce repetition is to use short forms. when we have a noun phrase like post-purchase cognitive dissonance, we can reduce that to PPCD. We introduce that first time in its short form after the full form in brackets, okay, as indicated there. There it is again. The third time, we might have a synonymous expression such as the feeling. We also have this. We could also use the pronoun it. So what we have here is 4 different ways of referring to the expression post-purchase cognitive dissonance. Now, this is really important for you as an academic writer because every time you write an academic piece of work, an essay, an assignment or a report, it's generally based on 1 or 2 or more key terms. And you can't just keep using that key term or the key terms repetitively ad nauseum throughout the whole paper. You need to find synonyms like this feeling, that condition, this, that, these, those, or pronouns, it, he, she, they, ways of referring to the key term other than constantly using the key term itself. Let me say it's important to use the key term, but don't overuse. And then we have the short form again at the end there. Let's look at flow and linking. We have key term, which I've already said, which links those first 2 sentences together. In the second paragraph, I'm not sure if you remember, but from the first one, we had or as a sentence starter. Now, or is a conjunction like and they don't generally, in an academic context, they don't generally start sentences, although you might see that in novels and magazine writing, not in academic writing. They are simply used and only used as conjunctions. So here we have it as a linker. So, for example, as another linker, and. Which and are your 2 best friends when it comes to linking sentences? Now, what we have here, using those simple linking devices, is 9 sentences now reduced to 4. And it gives us a better sense of flow and understanding of the ideas so the reader can access the message. Then we have an expression here, it is important because, and that's a crucial phrase because what it does is, as it says, it highlights importance. I'm going to come back to those type of expressions because I really want to focus on those. We also have some citations in here from Smith, 2015, and Smith Notes. What you might notice, there is a slight difference between them. In one, we have an idea-focused citation, that's the first one, because it places the author in brackets with the year. The second one, Smith Notes, is what we call an author-focused citation, which places the author in sentence. You can see the difference there, and you should mix those citation styles up. That is, if you're using, as in this case, what's called an author date reference system. This one is APA. Harvard is another one which is similar. Okay, so what we're starting to get to are some specifics around sentence length. Now, in an academic situation, if you take on my advice and start to link related ideas, you'll form compound sentences. So what this means is that the average sentence length will start to be sentences of around 2 to 3 lines in a Word document, which is about 15 to 25 words. Now, this doesn't mean you can't write short sentences. You can, because they can be very impactful. And it's not that you can't write longer sentences. You can, because sometimes you have to make elaborate ideas. But you don't want to be patterning in your writing at either end of this continuum or spectrum. You don't want to be writing a lot of short sentences, as you saw in the previous examples. And you don't want to be writing a lot of long sentences because the message becomes hard to follow. So your average sentence length will be around that 15 to 25 word bracket. We don't want to be particularly in the longer end of that. If you're writing sentences of 45, 50, 60 words, your point gets lost. So 2 tips out of here. If the sentences are short and have a clear relationship, join them with a linker. If they're long, and when I say long, I'm talking about 4 or 5 lines in length in a Word doc, then consider breaking it up. So going back to that linking method, we've got those 2 short sentences there. The example I gave you before used which. And there's another example there, again using which, but this time, rather than that may exist, you can use the ing form. The feeling of unease existing in a customer's mind. That ing form can give you a nice sense of flow as well. So if you compare examples 2 and 3 with example 1, you should be able to see that they read much more cohesively and therefore fluently. In academic writing, there are going to be 2 types of language. You have your content language. This is topical. This is about what you say. So it'll be about pedagogy, class, assessment, art, theory, history, whatever it's about. The second type will be functional language. This is the cohesive devices which link and highlight words like therefore, how, etc. Expressions like this is important, this shows, this tells us. We need to use that type of language to bring our content language together. There are 2 URLs. You can link to those and use them. They will give you word banks and expression banks of this type of functional language. I recommend you use these in your written work. So, how long should a paragraph be? There are no set rules for paragraph length. If we go back to what I said at the start, it's not so much a length unit, it's an idea unit. But in academic writing, we tend to see no single sentence or one-page paragraphs. Short paragraphs of 1 to 3 sentences give the impression that you have not adequately developed your ideas. So if you have a page with a series of short, choppy paragraphs, again, it looks like you're not elaborating, you're not developing, you're jumping around in your ideas. Overly long paragraphs, more than half a page, simply make it hard to read. It looks like a wall of text for the reader. So, if you have a shift in thought, a shift in idea, start a new paragraph, go to a new line. Most pages in your work should have at least 2 to 3 paragraphs. Not 1, not 8 to 9, but 2 to 3 is about what we'd expect. As you're writing, there are some key questions to ask yourself. Does each sentence link to the one before and after it in the paragraph? How are you showing this? What sort of linkers are you using? Therefore, so, as a result. What is the intra, that's within, what is the intra-paragraph sequence? Is it logical from start to finish of the paragraph? Ask, why am I writing this? That's about relevance, so should the information be included? The second question is the same again. Why am I writing this? Why am I putting it here? This is a sequential question. Why is that information there, not somewhere else in the writing? Then there is inter-paragraph, between paragraphs. Do paragraphs relate to each other in a logical sequence in terms of the overall macro level logic of the paper? I always advise you before you start writing to make a map of the writing, a simple map. It doesn't have to be too complicated. And you can refine it as you work, but it does need to have a logical sequence. So when I say a map, I'm talking about getting out a piece of paper and writing out what's the first idea I'm talking about, what's the second idea, the third, the fourth. Now, this can be refined. As you're reading, you might figure out, I don't need that idea. I'm going to push that idea up because it's quite important, and I'm going to bring that new idea in. So don't be afraid to refine as you go. What we're after is sequence, link, and flow. We want a narrative thread through the paper.